Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the None of Your Business podcast. Now, today we have a very special treat for you as we're going to be sharing with you an interview that we did recently with Chris Ducker. You know him from YouPreneur, his online digital marketing, sales, etc. business, helping you to become a YouPreneur, and also his in-person YouPreneur Summit. Encourage you to check those out. But today, I want to talk to you about the virtualization of many of your tasks. And I know that's something that so many of us struggle with. We sat down with Chris and we talked about the ins and outs. What can you virtualize? How to find a good virtual assistant? How the best practices, how to best implement all of these strategies. I'm sure that you're going to find this next several minutes together extremely valuable. And I hope that you'll take notes. And I hope that you too will begin to become more efficient and effective with your time through these strategies that Chris is about to share with us. Today we have with us a super special guest. Last night we were with Chris Winfield and Jen Gottlieb, who our guest knows. And then later on today at 7 Eastern at J o'clock, we're going to be with Jay Abraham. And sandwiched in between those two, we have an incredible opportunity to bring you a very good and new friend that we actually just met last year, right?
Yeah.
Last year. Him and his lovely wife, Chris Ducker is responsible for this YouPreneur movement, and not just in Europe, but all around the world, and also is the author of 2 books. The first book, which a lot of you actually, when we mentioned that Chris was coming in, a lot of you know him for his book, Virtual Freedom. We're going to talk a lot about that today. But also he has his second book, The Rise of the YouPreneur. Probably, wow, like right now in these times, probably more than ever, the rise of the YouPreneur.
Happening now. I love it.
So let's bring on our super special guest, Chris Ducker. Welcome to Black Diamond Club.
Hey, how are you guys? Good to see you.
Doing fantastic. You know, you've been lurking around too a little bit in Black Diamond Club.
I like to be called a lurker. That's what I lurk.
Be there, but we like when people lurk because you get to know the group. So
hey, look, if I can lurk and kind of warm up for Jay Abraham, I think I'm a good player. This is a good place to be in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You're like opening speaker for Jay Abraham. It's great.
I want to start off with an odd thing. I've asked everybody if they'll take a picture. Let's get some social proof going, because here's what I know. I follow you on a lot of your social media channels, and when you do events, people are always posting, and then you repost on your story, especially on Instagram. So for our Black Diamond Club members, and I'll mention this because it might take people a hot second to jump on, I'll remind them, but take a picture of your screen and tag Chris, not so concerned about Lacey and I want you to tag Chris Ducker. I want you to put it on your Facebook profile, your page, Dennis, that stuff, do whatever you got to do, but also on Instagram. Chris is big on Instagram. So post this up, show Chris some love there. What's the Instagram handle?
Just at Chris Ducker.
At
Easy
Chris
enough.
Ducker. And for those of you in the United States, Ducker, not Ducka. All right.
It.
So you know a little something about virtual services, and I've been saying that this is a time, we're calling this the day of reckoning is coming, reevaluation day, as people reevaluate everything that they once thought to be true and the way they've done business, the way they've transacted business. And one thing that I'm saying is that I think that this is a great time to make some shifts with your personnel and to rethink how you're structured and potentially become more efficient and also save some money. So why don't you start us off with this idea? Because I think a lot of people would be scared of this idea of, well, I don't know about virtualizing anything. I like to have a human person
right in front of me.
Here.
Yeah, that's often what they say. So they can have more control, right?
Now that's the key word right there. I'm so glad that you dropped that in. Oh, because here we go. Okay, wind me up and let me go, baby. Because I'm about to
off you go.
Off you go.
Off you go.
right here. So control, and more importantly for us A-type entrepreneurs, right? I mean, we are incredibly type A individuals. We believe that we can do everything ourselves. We believe a lot of the time that we have to do everything ourselves and that nobody else out there can do it better than us. And in 2014, I wrote my first book, Virtual Freedom, and I coined the term superhero syndrome in the intro to that book. And that's what that is. Some people might call it micromanaging. Some people might call it being a control freak. I just call it suffering from that horrific entrepreneurial infliction of, without a doubt, superhero syndrome. And so the big thing here is to understand that you don't have to do it all yourself, that there are people out there that can actually do it better than you, contrary to what your mind tells you on a daily basis. But more importantly, actually, you are doing yourself, your employees, your partners, your staff, your customers, and anyone else that you come into contact with from a business ownership perspective, a massive disjustice by trying to do it all yourself, by trying to keep all the control on your side. And here's the big kick in the pants, and this is where every business owner's ears will prick up. You're also doing it at your own financial peril as well. And I've seen it over and over and over again. So yeah, you know, there's a lot of issues that people go through when it comes to kind of, you know, I guess being able to relinquish or at least loosen up the reins a little bit. But once you start doing it, amazing things happen.
We're here. We're clicking over. You were like, "What's going on?" I
thought you left me already. I was beginning to get very upset then.
Yeah, but I that's really interesting because I do think that the normal entrepreneur, they absolutely think that nobody is going to be able to do the tasks as well as they can do it. But the problem is, you hit it on the head, is they handcuff themselves because they're doing tasks that don't make them a lot of money, and they could pay somebody very little money to do that for them. So it's like, how do you get over that mindset of understanding what you should be holding on to and what you should be letting go of? Do you have any tips on that?
Totally. And I've got an exercise I can give everybody actually right out of the gate. And for those who are live, if you want to do this and then kind of ask questions, I'm happy to, you know, answer them. But if you're not live and you're watching the replay, that's all good. I still like you, not as much as the people that actually turn up live, but I still like you anyway. You need to get a piece of paper and you need to get a pen, and we're going to create our 3 lists to freedom. Now, before we go through this exercise, I want to kind of set it up a little bit in terms of why this came about in my own life as well. So in 2009, I hit burnout. It was the end of the year. We'd been building our business for about 2.5 years at that point. We had just had our first 7-figure year. Everything looked great. We were at about 150, 160 or so employees, and was feeling on top of the world on the outside. On the inside, it was a whole different ball game. So one morning I woke up and I couldn't actually get out of bed. My wife called the doctor. We have a company doctor at the time, came to my house, looked at me, said, "We got to get him into the car and get him to the hospital. He needs to go on fluids." So I go in. I have acute exhaustion, acute dehydration, and early onset depression. So I was in the hospital for about a week and a half or so, kind of just recovering from a whole bunch of stuff. And unbeknownst to me at the same time, because I'd been sitting in a chair for 15 hours a day, 6 days a week for, at that point, probably almost 2.5, 3 years, I had also been crushing a bulging disc in my L5S1 region, which many of your people will get and understand completely. And that actually ended up with me having an L5S1 fusion in 2012. But getting back to end of 2009, burnt out, went away for a little retreat with the wife. And we started kind of, like when you're at a resort, you have the little pad near the, the telephone in the hotel room. And I'm writing down bits and pieces there. We're at the bar, we're getting the bar napkin, writing down bits and pieces there. And by the time we checked out and we went back home, I had about 40 or 50 bits of paper with all the different stuff that I was dealing with on a daily basis that I either wasn't enjoying or didn't feel like I should be doing it, right? Or that I was doing, but, I wasn't doing it very well and all these other things. And that's where the 3 Lists of Freedom was born. This is a real thing. It happened to me first, before I put it into the book, before I did it in front of tens of thousands of people around the world on stage. So what you do is you get that piece of paper, you draw 2 lines down it, and you have basically 3 columns that you create. And out of those 3 columns, what happens is we're going to create those 3 lists. So on the first column, you write down all the stuff that you feel that you just absolutely hate doing. Like, these are the kind of tasks that you procrastinate all day on, that you sincerely just put off. If you're using a digital camera, drag, drop, drag, drop, drag, drop. Anybody do that? Like, I do it all the time still, but drag, drop, right? And at that point, you move on to the second column. Okay. Second column is all the stuff that you're doing. You don't necessarily hate doing it, but you're doing it anyway because you believe that you should be doing it and that there's maybe no one else out there that can do it as well as you, right? Or you're struggling with these tasks in some way, shape, or form. So that's the second list. And then the third list is by far the single most important one out of all of them, particularly for business owners. And by the way, you can do this with staff, you can do this with management, but for you personally, that third list is by far the most important one. And that is a list of all the things that you feel as the business owner that you are, that you should not be doing. Your time should be better spent doing something else. Right. So spending more time with top 20% clientele, or going to business conferences to drum up new business, or developing new products or services, launching new opportunities, masterminds, events, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the third list. Right. So list number 1 is a list of all the stuff you hate doing, but you procrastinate, but you got to do it because the business demands it from you. List number 2, a list of all the things that you're doing, but you're struggling with it in some way, shape, or form. And then the last list is a list of all the things that you feel you should not be doing. Now, when you're done with those 3 lists, you ultimately will have the blueprint that you need to be able to start delegating tasks to virtual employees. Plain simple.
So we separate these out. I still would have a fear, even on drag and drop, right? Because then here's what we think is, all right, so I hear what you're saying, Chris, and I'm going to offload this to somebody that I don't know. What if it gets screwed up, or they don't drag and drop right? How do I overcome that? Because here's what I think. I think that a lot of people actually know, like the first column list, like quick, right? Like, there's no challenge in making the list. The challenge is handing the list to someone else. Yep. How do I overcome that?
Well, here's the thing. The only way to overcome it is to actually do it. Plain simple. There's no magic pill that you can pop here and the pain's going to go away. Like, right. Advil doesn't exist in this world. It just doesn't exist. So the fact of the matter is, you must start delegating in order to build up more confidence in doing that as an activity. But you don't do it at your peril, at your mental peril, at your bandwidth peril, and everything that comes along with it. So the way that you do it is you start doing it slowly but surely, right? Like, you're not going to say, hey, here's my password to my PayPal account. Go manage my finances. No, obviously not, right? The one thing that almost all entrepreneurs, it's the last thing that they give access to, Yet it's the one thing that plagues them day to day more than anything else.
Email.
There you go. Well done. You get a virtual clap all the way from Cambridge, England. Seriously, it's email. It's crazy how much time we spend in our inboxes, yet it's the last thing among everything else. It's the absolute last thing that anyone will give access to. I got a couple of tips that we can kind of try on that side of things as well. But ultimately, you start slowly and you build things up over time. So what you can do, if this is something that you're seriously considering doing, right, whether it's to buy more time in your own day so you can spend more time with customers or spend more time on marketing and less time on admin stuff or updating your website or uploading videos to YouTube and updating and managing social media and all the stuff that we need to do nowadays, all that stuff is delegatable. All that stuff should be done by somebody else. It is way below your pay grade. And I don't mean that in a detrimental way towards anybody else in your organization. But the fact is, if you're the business owner, you should not be updating bloody Facebook. You just should not be doing it. Your time is much more valuable than that. Way more valuable. So you start slowly but surely. But the single biggest mistake that people make when hiring remote employees is that they hire one person to do 5 people's jobs. That's the biggest mistake. So I don't know, if I had $1,000 for every time I got an email from somebody that said, hey, Chris, I'm thinking about hiring a VA for the first time. What I want them to do is manage my calendar and manage my inbox and manage all my social media and edit my videos and upload them to YouTube. And then they want to edit and repurpose all of my podcast content as well. Oh, don't forget that they need to obviously record videos for me and walk through my, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like 5 different jobs and they expect one person to do it all for them. The analogy I use, if you're building a house from scratch, you don't expect your general contractor to build every single bit of that house. No, you work with him specifically, and then he will then bring in the plumber. He'll bring in the electrician. He'll bring in the plasterer. He'll bring in the roofer, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I wouldn't let my electrician anywhere near the plumbing in my house. And therefore, I'm not going to let a video editor try and design, my company's logo, for example. Like, get graphic design, video editor, 2 totally different roles. Does that make sense for you guys? To hire for the role, not for the task.
Absolutely. And I always say I loved your idea of just jumping in because, to my knowledge, I'm sure this probably exists somewhere, but there's no books on how to swim. Like, how you learn to swim is you don't read a book first and say, okay, I read the book. Now I'm going to go in the water and I know how to do it. You just have to get in the water. That's how you figure out if you know how to swim. You talked about the perils, and you mentioned early on the financial perils. And I think that's a huge motivator. Can you talk about why or how, if I found a way to delegate some activity and not doing, if I didn't find a way, how that represents a financial peril to me and my business?
Totally, without a doubt. So what's the number one biggest, most important commodity for every business owner? It's time. Plain and simple. We all have exactly the same amount of time in each day. It's finite. It's not variable in any way, shape, or form. Now, some of us will work more than others, but for those of us who just say, look, you know what? I want to work X amount of hours every single week. This is my time. We need to make sure that we're maximizing that time as much as possible. It goes back to list number 3, the stuff you should not be doing. So it's like a negative positive almost, right? Like, I don't see that Facebook, for example, is a great use of my time when it comes to planning the content on my Facebook page, publishing that content on the Facebook page, setting up the initial bits and pieces of engagement on that Facebook page. That is not the best use of my time. What I should be doing is getting paid thousands of dollars to coach our clients, or to speak on stage, or to consult with a small business. Like, that's what I should be doing. So do what you do best and delegate the rest. right? So for every task that you're doing, that you could quite easily delegate it to somebody who could do it just as well, if not even better than yourself. For every time that you do that task, you're robbing yourself fundamentally of that valuable commodity of your time, and therefore time that could be spent doing more high level activities like, producing that brand new online course, or producing that book that's going to, be given away 10,000 times a year to create X amount of leads, to bring X amount of new business, and so on and so on. Like, the list is literally endless what a business owner could be doing with their time. And that's why I say you buy more time. People always say, oh, I wish I had more time. Oh, there's not enough time in the day. It's called delegation. You just pay for it and you get the extra time. What you do with it is totally down to you.
Yeah, Chris, I love that, because I think that is one of the best things that you could do for your business, is be able to delegate, to free up the time for you to do things that actually get you in front of more people and make more money. But here's a hang up that people always say to me when I tell them, I think you need to hire, you're in that place where you need to start to move forward and get somebody else to do some of this work for you. They always say to me, well, I'm not ready because I don't have anything written out, or I don't have it, systematized so that somebody could come in and learn how to do it. I would imagine that hiring the right virtual assistant could actually help you create structure and systems around these things. So do you have any advice on getting people to do it before they feel they're ready?
Totally, absolutely. So look, the one thing that I always do, and we're going back a good few years now, which is why I have no hair left, but we're going back a good few years now. But when I first started hiring VAs in, late 2009, early 2010, what I would do is, because I'm a visual person, right? I'm not the best typer in the world. And so I delegate all my blog posts. Rather dictate all of my blog posts. I dictated fundamentally both of my books, pretty much page for page. And so I'm more of a talker. More of a talker than a typer. And I'm definitely a very visual learner. I don't know about you guys and the people in your community, but if I want to learn how to do, like, I wanted to learn how to clean my espresso machine a couple of months ago. It was brand new. We'd had it in the kitchen for a couple months, and that little light comes on that says you need to spend some money on Amazon for the little tablet that goes in the thing. And I'm like, well, where's the thing? I don't know where the thing is. So instead of pulling out the manual, which came with the machine, I just went to YouTube and I watched somebody else do it, and I did it at the exact same time. So what I started doing with my VAs, and everyone's going to love this, is that, let's say, for example, we'll pick a task of publishing a blog post, for example, right? So we've already written the blog post. We'll pretend that the text is already there. We've pasted it into our WordPress box on our draft page. Now, what do we got to do? Well, we've got to add an image in there, right? So it's visually pleasing. We've got to maybe add some bold, a little bit of italics, maybe for a call to action at the end of that blog post as well. We've got to make sure it's keyword linked with, a few hyperlinks and that sort of type of thing. Maybe we're going to embed a video from the YouTube channel as well. So it's kind of multimedia, and Google loves that stuff nowadays, right? And then lastly, we might want to have some sort of a call to action in there for an opt-in magnet that we might be pushing at the time, or something to, go and watch this video or download this ebook or whatever it is, right? All that stuff, all that kind of laying out of that blog post probably take about 30 or 45 minutes. If even if you've done it a whole bunch of time, like on average. Well, here's the thing. When you're doing it, just simply record your screen using something like Camtasia or ScreenFlow, a couple of software packages. I use ScreenFlow myself. And while you're doing it, have a microphone in front and say, this is why I'm bolding the last paragraph, or this is why I'm including the link here, or that call to action at this part of the post. Talk through the activity that you're actually doing. And then when you're done, export that and dump it into Dropbox for your VA to watch and to learn how to do that task, and then never do it again. And that is fundamentally how I have trained pretty much every single VA that I've ever hired myself for the last decade, literally. So it's not hard to teach people. It's not hard to train people up. You've just got to have a little bit of a process behind it. And for me, that's been the way that I've done it. Like, you never do that task again. And the good thing about having it in video format recorded and not doing it live, like walking somebody through it on, say, like a Zoom call where you're sharing a screen or something. The really good thing about having it recorded and up in Dropbox is that if for whatever reason that VA decides to leave, or you decide for them to leave, then when the next one comes in to replace that person, you don't have to do it all over again. You just say, watch that video on how to lay out our blog posts. Watch that video on how I like my videos edited for YouTube. Watch that video, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So yeah, that's the way I would suggest that you bring people on board and get started with it. And over a period of time, you'll just create this encyclopedia of training material that will, be evergreen. And we still use videos now that were recorded 8 years ago.
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's gold. People are so excited right now, saying it's just brilliant. I think they're pumped and motivated because I think people feel like it's going to cost them more time and more work and more effort to get things ready to hire somebody. And what you just laid out is the ability to do it all at once and then make it evergreen so that it's always there. I love it. Great strategy.
And listen,
here's the other thing as well. When you bring somebody on board for the first time, and this is actually really key, when you bring somebody on board for the first time, don't expect them, even if they've got the experience needed for the role, don't expect them to know how you like everything done your way. Because even though they could probably do the task already, they don't know how you like it done. Sure. And we had a thing years ago with a client of ours that sent a request for his VA to put together a list of Miley Cyrus merchandise. This is how many years ago it was now. I did have a hair back in Miley days. With the whole Hannah Montana stuff, right?
Oh my goodness.
So the VA, it was a long time ago. I'm showing my age now. This is horrible. This was not part of the deal. I wasn't supposed to go this deep. But Hannah Montana merchandise for his daughter. So the VA thought, oh, it's Hannah Montana. I'm going to make the spreadsheet kind of pink and purple and kind of glitzy and glamoury, and there'll be like 10 links and yada yada yada. So when the VA sent the work back, the client freaked out. Was like, why isn't it green and blue? They're our corporate colors. What's this pink and purple thing? She's using Times Roman. I'm an Arial font size 12 kind of guy, and I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like, she could do the task absolutely fine, that she didn't know how he wanted it done. So don't assume anything, and understand that you will need to spend a little bit of time bringing your new employee on board properly. But here's the newsflash, man. You'd have to do that if they were right next to you in the same office anyway. Yes. So it's no difference, really.
That's great.
And if you're in Black Diamond Club and have attended our workshops, even for in-person training, it's the same concept. And so you could do a blend of these, or one of the others is you could also take those videos and put them in a Shawn Dills VA Facebook group. That's just me and Lacey and anybody, and then I could load those videos there. Dropbox probably a little safer though, because absolutely. Probably will be around longer.
Much longer
Facebook could go away. So I want to also make super clear to everybody so that you're not like, well, this is a big theoretical discussion. So Chris, you and your lovely wife, Urs, you have a company that provides these services to individuals, yes?
Yes, correct. It's called Virtual Staff Finder.
Virtual Staff Finder. Go there, virtualstafffinder.com, so you can visit the website while we talk about this. So the reason why that's important is you mentioned earlier, like you should find a general contractor, because that's the next hurdle. So let's suppose that for our viewers that now we're getting them convinced. And I think that they're like, okay, so I can make these videos once and then potentially never have to do the task again. This is great. And then you said, but you shouldn't hire like 18 different people. You should get a contractor. You should get the person that knows and has a team of people, and it will be a good fit. So tell me about that next process. Virtual Staff Finder, is that a contractor?
I mean, Virtual Staff Finder, for want of a better term, we're a recruitment hub is what we are. So the way it works is busy entrepreneur, Virtual Staff Finder, pay a recruitment fee, and we will find the VA for you. So you don't have to go through hundreds of resumes online. You don't have to post any job postings on all of those freelancer websites that are out there. We will do initial interviews. We will do screenings. We will do police checks. We're in the Philippines, right? Like the company is there. It has a real facility there. And, we've been doing it for 10 years. We've hired over 8,500 VAs now over that period of time for our clients, literally all around the world. So it really, what it does, ultimately, it fast tracks the recruiting, I guess the recruiting task itself. But at the same time, because we've done it so many times, we've kind of got it down in regards to avoiding the bad apples. And then obviously being able to kind of kick things off on a good footing straight away. I mean, our success rate is right in the 90s in terms of people sticking and doing well and being there for a long, long time. So the big thing here, though, the way to look at it is that that's what we do. We're ultimately a matchmaker, right? Like, we're match.com for stressed out entrepreneurs. But the big role that we hire for 99% of the times at this particular moment, and that actually has been like that for a number of years, is what we call our GVA, or a general VA, which is much like the general contractor, but they can actually do some of the work themselves. Can't do all of it, but they can do some of it. And based on my personal experience of working with clients all around the world on this stuff, the GVA is the one VA that particularly anyone doing business online in some fashion or another, this is the one role that everybody needs above and beyond everything else. They'll do things like manage your email if you let them. We can get into that, by the way, but manage your email. They'll set up your email marketing and manage that for you. They'll handle your calendar for you. They'll take care of your travel arrangements and your hotel bookings when we can start doing it again. They'll do, things like managing your Dropbox and keeping that clean, managing your Google Drive for you. They'll do taking down minutes of virtual meetings. We're doing more of them. How many times I'll get the notes for this meeting over to you, but now I've got to watch the video back again and go through all that? No, they can be on the call and they can do it all for you. They can prepare slide decks for you for presentations. They can update all of your social media platforms and schedule posts out for weeks and weeks and weeks to come. There's a whole bunch of stuff, customer service tickets online and all that sort of stuff that they can do for you. That's the GVA role, that general VA. And 90% of the time with our clients at Virtual Staff Finder, they're the people that we're hiring for people.
So I know that what a lot of people out there are thinking, because I have these conversations with them all the time, they're probably thinking to themselves, well, that's going to cost me a ton of money. And I don't know if I'm correct in this, but I would imagine that having a virtual assistant is probably not as costly as having somebody right next to you, right? That you hire to come into your office and spend time with you. And people, I feel like, always associate it to what the perceived cost of an actual in-person office manager or assistant would look like. Can you kind of break through that barrier a little bit for us?
Yeah, look, and I should preempt this by saying that, you can hire people from all around the world. In fact, actually, this is one of the reasons why the remote hiring kind of revolution, right, is so attractive for people because you're not confined to geographical constraints when it comes to finding the right people for the job. So to really quantify it, if you want someone, for example, to write all of your emails for you, to write all of your blog content for you, to handle all of your, your written correspondence and that sort of type of thing, that's probably better off, if I'm to be very honest, that's probably better off being kept closer to home with a native English speaker, right? And you know what it's like we'll drop kind of like, slang terms and terms about that only somebody from, say, the UK or the United States or Canada or someone would get. That might fly over the head of somebody, who is not a native English speaker from that country. So there's certain things that you should keep closer to home. But certainly this general VA role that I'm talking about, that can be outsourced and delegated to pretty much anybody anywhere in the world. Now, Virtual Staff Finder, we work entirely with just Filipino VAs, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, the level of English is second to none. It's the third, I believe, largest geographically, the third largest English-speaking country on the planet. And not only that, but they're all educated in English as well. So they read in great English, they write great English, they speak great English. And that's, really the number one defining factor right there for us entrepreneurs from, outside and around the world. The second reason why Filipino VAs are so attractive to us business owners is because of the fact that the cost of living in the Philippines is so low compared to Western world. And now that doesn't mean that you can pay them peanuts and expect them to serve up, a martini shaken, not stirred for you, right? Like you get a glass of dishwater if that's what you want to do. But ultimately, you've got to, you get what you pay for. So just like you would hire somebody locally and, with, 10 years management experience, you'd have to pay for that. If you want somebody with 3, 4, 5 years of VA experience in the Philippines, you'll have to pay for that too. However, on average, it will be anything between a third to half what you would expect to pay somebody locally to do a similar role. So great English, great cost savings. And because they're virtual and because they're outside of the country, you don't have to worry about things like medical insurance. You don't have to worry about dental plans. You don't have to worry about, physical office space or equipment and all that kind of stuff as well. So it really is a massive cost saving benefit as well. Now, I will say, though, the whole kind of health benefits, the health insurance and whatnot, you can still give you a virtual assistant in the Philippines, all that stuff if you want, but they don't expect it like they do in the Western world.
I love that because I think that there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are in a position where they need the help, but they quite can't afford it for somebody here in the States. So it actually gives them massive opportunity to be able to do it, to, spring load their business so they can make that next move and that next step of growth. So it's so wonderful.
So one of the things, Chris, that I say is for our members, mostly in the service professions, and a lot of them or most of them are working out of a brick and mortar place. But with technology today, I've always advocated that I think that their first hire should be what I always say a personal assistant. That's what I tell versus a receptionist. And so we're getting the question of, the difference, should this be? And so first of all, I want to clarify, that's why I asked Chris to come on. I think that this should actually be your first hire before just somebody that you're paying an hourly wage, a body that's sitting there and answering the phone. And you guys know my opinion on this. The phone is not nearly as important as you've been tricked into thinking it was because it's not 1980 anymore.
Hey, I'm not even joking. I was having lunch earlier today. My phone rang and I was like, what the heck is that? Because it hasn't rung. It hasn't rung for about a week, I think. Nobody does phone calls anymore. You know what I mean?
Is that Hannah Montana calling?
So yes, we could virtualize the personal assistant, managing content, all those things that Chris already talked about. So since you've said that, let's dive into that. I want to give you the opportunity to talk to us about managing emails and managing calendars, giving that up and what that looks like in this setting.
Look, again, nothing's perfect straight away. Like you must take that on board. If you expect, to pop that magic pill and have everything work perfectly right out of the gate, you're kidding yourself. You're kidding yourself, plain simple. So you do have to, it's baby steps at first, right? So let's go to the calendar for, first of all, straight away, right? So with something like Google Calendar or iCal, if you're on, Mac or whatever the case may be, you can create a secondary calendar that you share just with your VA. So there might be certain bits and pieces on your normal calendar that you deem at this point still in that relationship as being somewhat either confidential or personal. Whatever the case may be, you don't have to, you don't have to disclose that information to begin with if you don't want to, or you don't feel comfortable doing it. Baby steps, secondary calendar, just for the work, for the VA that the VA needs to know that maybe you need help with, or that you want them to, you want to keep them up to date on your movements, whatever it is. So the calendar is actually a very easy one to delegate pretty much straight out of the gate, if that's what you want to do. And I will say the personal assistant in the real world is very much like the GVA in the virtual world, right? So they'll do pretty much everything that the personal assistant could, do for you that might be sitting outside of your office, maybe except, not making you cups of coffee. Literally that's the only thing that they can't do for you. Pretty much everything else is for want of a better term, the same in some way, shape or form. So that's the calendar stuff, right? Now, email is a different animal because number one, we are very, very, very tied to our inboxes. There's not a lot in today's society that we can do to get away from them. And that's actually not a bad thing, because email is still your number one best way to build your online business in my book. It's not on Facebook. It's not on YouTube. It's not via a blog or via a podcast. You've got to get people out of all of those platforms. You don't own those platforms. You want to bring them back to your website and get them on your email list. Very, very important indeed. Because otherwise what's happening is you're building your business on rented land. Zuckerberg owns Facebook. He owns your Facebook group. You don't own it. He just lets you use his website to run it. It's really that simple. So get people off the platforms. Utilize them, yes, but get them off the platforms into email. So again, much like the calendar, the way that I started working with my VA when it came to managing my email was, the first thing I did was I created a new email address that was private to me only and to only individuals that I gave that email address to. So it was people like my wife, maybe my doctor, possibly, top 5% clients that have access to me for one reason or another. Stuff that I would be deemed very, very highly confidential for the most part, right? Everything else that if you look at your inbox, there's a whole bunch of spam that comes in. There's a whole bunch of outreach that comes in. But most importantly, if you look properly and you think back retrospectively, managing your inbox over the last 30, 60, 90 days or so, it's highly likely that you have been repeating similar types of tasks over and over and over again when it comes to the managing of your inbox itself. And that's the stuff that your VA can go ahead and manage for you. And the way we do it, and the way that my inbox, chris@chrisducker.com, the way that's managed actually is that we have a whole bunch of canned responses saved inside of Gmail, and we're updating them all the time, deleting them, adding to them all the time. Now, this is not an impersonal thing as well. I want to say, like, when people email you, is it bad for someone to reply on your behalf? No, it's not, as long as they know that it's not you. And the way that you can do it, and I don't know whether anybody in your community has ever emailed me personally, but you can do so and find out. At the end of the email, there's a little PS that says, sent on behalf of Chris Ducker by a Team Ducker Rockstar. That's our sign off, right? And so whenever you see that, it's coming from my team, but not from me personally. And it's simple things like, Chris, would you come on my podcast and talk about building a personal brand or managing a virtual team or whatever? Or, maybe it's a speaking invitation, or maybe, the whole bunch of stuff that we get. We probably have I think there's got to be close to 100 canned responses in there. And a lot of the questions that we're answering we're doing over and over and over again. Now, here's the really fun part, particularly of working with somebody on the other side of the world. By the time I wake up in the morning, I've only got about 25 to 30 emails that I need to get into. Now, that might still sound like a lot of emails, but I have a 3-click rule that I can share with you if you're interested in a minute. But going back real quick to the reason I've only got 25 to 30, I average about 200 to 200 emails a day. But the reason why, when I wake up and I'm done with my creative work first, so anything creative, I get out of the way first, and then I get into email around about 10:30 in the morning. And the reason why I've got so few emails in there is because of the time difference. And Michelle, one of my VAs who manages my inbox for the most part, she'll be in there ahead of me, time zone wise, clearing out all the junk, handling all the canned responses, deleting all the stuff, archiving all the stuff, forwarding the stuff on to different people in different parts of the company. So I know that when I sign in, I've only got 20, 25 or so messages. Boom, that's what I knock out. And I manage my email once in less than 1 hour every single day. So that's the beautiful thing about having somebody on another time zone. You are literally working while you're sleeping. It's great. I never get bored of it, ever.
I want to have you explain to us the process with Virtual Staff Finder. But before I do that, a question that's popping up, I'm getting it in a couple formats. You had talked about taking the tasks that basically, even in the 3 buckets, is kind of tasks that I am doing. What about tasks that I don't know how to do? Let's say, for example, like even you gave the example of email marketing. So let's say that I'm like, wow, that's a great idea, but I actually don't know how to do it. Do I have to learn it first and then teach it to my VA? Or are there some VAs that come out of the box, they already know how to do ClickFunnels or MailChimp or these sorts of things?
Oh, there'll be a few for sure. Yeah. I mean, they're not in droves, like ready and waiting to kind of work with you or anything. Don't get me wrong. But there are certain people out there that will know how to use ClickFunnels, or they'll know how to use ActiveCampaign or ConvertKit or whatever. Yes, there's a few people that are definitely out there. They usually do come at a premium, though. I will say that. They're usually at a premium because of the fact that they've gone through all that training, they've got all that experience, and so on and so on.
And then what about your recommendations as far as interactions with your clientele? So maybe not actually a part of like the onboarding staff, but how do you feel about having them field questions? So not actually the consulting side of the work or doing the heavy lifting, but interacting. I mean, you had mentioned that as far as email, customer management. Is that something that can get done by a VA?
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that you would have to train them on in terms of your style and how you want things done and laid out, and, certain SOPs that they might have to follow in doing so. But it's like anything else. If you train somebody well enough in it, they'll be able to handle it very easily for you. Will somebody be able to do it right out the gate? No, you've got to spend some time onboarding them. You have to be realistic about it.
And so a couple of things. One, I think this is a perfect time, though, to do this because, look, whether we like it or not, most of your businesses are slightly down in volume. So you actually have the time to invest in this. Number two, I want to reiterate, Chris earlier said, we're talking about 30 to 50% less in price than doing this locally. So it's also a great option. I want to dive into, so let's say that I'm ready. So I hope that we've gotten some people they're ready to go. We go to virtualstafffinder.com. What is the process? Because that I think now that's the unknown. That's the scary part. I go to you, what happens?
Well, I mean, they can go to virtualstafffinder.com. The entire how it works page on there will lay it out very easily for everyone to understand. But ultimately, it comes down to signing up for the service, kicking off with your job description document. So it's basically a list of everything that you want out of your VA and how you want them to work, what you expect to pay them, and so on and so on and so on. That will go back to the VSF team. They'll go back and forth with you on that to perfect it as much as possible. Then the next step is for them to start sourcing. From there, they'll go ahead and start doing any initial interviews, background checks, et cetera, et cetera. And from then, obviously, it comes down to giving you the 3 top candidates that we believe are going to be right for you. And then you can go ahead and fundamentally interview them, usually via Skype, and ultimately hire the one you like the most.
I love it. It's so streamlined and so simple. And more importantly, like if you're out there and you're listening, I know, because Shawn and I talk to you guys all the time, there is some serious time vampires in your life that are sucking your productivity, that are sucking your efficiency, and that you can literally be paying somebody to do for you so you can get out there and get more clients, which is where you make your money anyway. So,
or do things you like to do. So if we can get efficient, you service your clients, and then you're going home and doing something, you might be able to free up time to spend with family or with loved ones. Yeah. It's not just about work either. That, you know, that's how you're able to enjoy life, because somebody in a different time zone is working while you're sleeping and you're being productive while you're with your kids.
They say money can't buy happiness. It can when you are not having to do the things that you hate doing. So
absolutely. Yeah. And you know, the big thing for me as well, as I've gotten older, potentially over the last 10 years, I've wanted to spend more time, not only with my kids, obviously, but I have genuinely wanted to spend more time on me as well, like on my self-development, on my ongoing learning and development, on my legacy and my impact as well. And it's okay to be a little selfish from time to time when it comes to that, as long as you're, the people around you are cool with that and they get it and you communicate about it. It's a little bit of selfishness is not a bad thing. And I mean, we set up our businesses, right, to have that freedom. We didn't set up our businesses just to have another bloody job. That's for sure. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't need another hobby either, particularly one that doesn't make me any money, right? So I think it's important to get that. It's important to understand that as well, Yeah.
So we have a couple of things. You came bearing gifts today, as usual. We always say this. We say this in every interview. There's people who have like this thing that's free, that they come on and they're like, hey, I'm giving you the free thing. And they're like, but it was always free. And then we have the Black Diamond Club interviewers, and we know that they always come with massive value, which is why they're so successful, by the way. So you have just a free guide for anybody. And then you have a special offer if anybody wants to engage in VSF.
Yeah, look, I think the big thing here is that a lot of people have problems getting to understand exactly what they can start delegating. Like, that's always one of the biggest questions that we have. What exactly can my VAs do for me? What exactly can I start delegating to them? So a few years ago, we put together a document which lists 101 tasks that you can delegate to your VA. And Shawn, dude, I'll send it on to you as soon as we're done here on the call, and you can go ahead and post it up in the Facebook group for everybody to download directly from inside of the group. Please don't share this willy-nilly. There's the word of the day right there, willy-nilly. This is my other gift to you today, is that particular term. So I'll share that for you. 101 tasks you can delegate. And then if anybody is interested and they do jump on board and utilize Virtual Staff Finder to find their VA, then all they need to do is just, reach out to me. You can do it on Insta at Chris Ducker, or you can just send me an email, chris@chrisducker.com. Let me know that you've signed up. Let me know the name and the email address that you use to sign up for the service. And I'll make sure that the team sends you a bonus pack full of tons of different templates and contracts and task templates and a whole bunch of other bits and pieces as well. Yeah, man, you can really fast track everything. And really this for me has been the biggest springboard over and over and over again, working with our clients, is that I've seen this is a massive springboard for people that can genuinely create more time in their lives, in their business, in their personal lives as well. And really genuinely in order some freedom to come into their lives. And I don't know about you, but the whole work-life balance thing is a tough one to handle. Like, it's a tough one to figure out. I'm still not there yet, genuinely. But I think that the more time we have, the more likely that it is that good things can come out of it, both for ourselves from an entrepreneurial perspective, but also for the people that we love around us as well.